Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, October the 17th, 2023. There have been some elections in Poland, and I do want to talk about them a bit, but I feel I do have to be cautious because I don't know anything about Polish politics. There are going to be people who might be watching this who know a lot about Polish politics, so there's plenty of scope for embarrassing myself. So I want to restrict myself to just two horoscopes, two people involved in the political process. One of them is Donald Tusk, who is is an opposition politician who has been a Polish prime minister. I believe he wants to be a prime minister again. His party, I think it's called the Civic Platform, have done quite well in the elections. They appear to have done quite well in the elections, but it doesn't seem as if anyone's got a majority. And so, yeah, I want to look at his horoscope, and I'm gonna restrict myself to his horoscope. I'm not going to really venture any opinions, except perhaps to say that he is a fanatical European. You know, he's been in the past president of the European Commission, recipient of the Charlemagne Prize. You know, Charlemagne Prize, that is seriously into European integration. You can tell by the name. So yeah, he is seriously into Europe and European integration. And I want to also look at the chart of the current deputy prime minister, who is Jarosław Kaczyński. He's been around in politics for a long time. His twin was also in politics, and his twin was killed in a plane crash in Russia. And that signature for a brother being killed in a plane crash is actually there in his horoscope. So I just want to look at these two charts, two politicians who were involved in the electoral process. I don't want to go into, sort of parties or too much into what they believe in, because I'm just going to embarrass myself. I just want to look at two people involved in the Polish political process, and I'm going to really try to just stick to the astrology. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology for today, as well as the I Ching for today. So let us start by let us start with the positions of the planets today. So here we are. By the way, that I didn't feel inclined to put up any picture of anyone, so I've just gone for that. Some nice astronomical picture, nice and bland. Positions of the planets today. You can see that the moon is at 2803 Scorpio at noon in New York. So for most of the day, the moon is going to continue to be in Scorpio. It's making a sextile aspect to Pluto. It's sort of opposition to Uranus. So there's plenty of scope for tension and intransigence. Moon opposition Uranus. With the moon in Scorpio being in a fixed sign, people don't want to change, and they're not really prepared to listen to reason. But The moon does change sign for most of us today, and it moves into Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is a very different energy. So at 8:36 p.m. London time, the moon moves into Sagittarius. So that would be 9:36 p.m. in Berlin or Paris, and I think in Warsaw. So the last few hours of the day, if you're in Europe, you have the moon in Sagittarius. If you're in the Americas, if you're in New York, for example, the moon will go into Sagittarius at just after 3:30 in the afternoon. So you get quite a chunk of the day with the moon in Sagittarius. If you're on the West Coast in Los Angeles, it goes into Sagittarius sort of around lunchtime. So half the day is in Sagittarius. So, the moon moving from Scorpio to Sagittarius is a big change because it makes us a bit freer. We're sort of able to express ourselves better. We are perhaps going to be less reserved if we've got some opinions. We'll want to tell everyone about them. Having said that, the moon, as soon as it moves into Sagittarius, it makes a square. It makes a square aspect to Saturn, so that you can see that there's moon moving into Sagittarius straight away would make a square aspect to Saturn. So that kind of squelches the moon. Happy to be in Sagittarius, but straight away hits a square with Saturn. I suppose if you want a kind of a symbolism for the moon sign change, it's like trying to escape by digging a tunnel. Those sort of Second World War tunnel films. People trying to escape prisoner of war camps by digging a tunnel. Or I suppose people try to escape prisons by digging a tunnel. And you dig a tunnel, and you come up to the surface, and you're really excited because you've escaped, and you find that you just arrived in another part of a prison. So that might be the feeling with moon square Saturn. Yeah, the moon's no longer in Scorpio, but it's now, it's in Sagittarius. Lots of freedom, perhaps, but no, it's square Saturn, and we've now got a whole new load of restrictions to deal with. So that might be how it feels, and really, that's the main stuff going on today. It's not a very dramatic day astrologically. The sun is moving ever closer to the south node. Tomorrow the sun will be exactly on the south node, and the south node, represents perhaps behavior we should have grown out of, perhaps behavior we thought we'd grown out of, I don't know, decades ago, or even in a previous incarnation. But we're just, if you believe in reincarnation, that is. But we just we can't help ourselves. It hits our line of least resistance. So if you've got with Sun conjunct the South Node in Libra, perhaps what we feel most inclined to do is to be nice, to be Libran, to compromise, to do, sort of float on the surface, to do anything to avoid an argument. That's probably not the right approach. We should be thinking about the North Node in Aries. That's about taking the initiative and telling people how we feel, because it possibly is a time when it's more important to be honest than diplomatic. So that's some of the stuff going on today. I don't think it's a particularly dramatic day, but I think it may be difficult to get things done. So I would suggest not just you, all of us, we kind of reduce our expectations in terms of what can be achieved. I now want to switch to my forecasts for the 12 signs. So here we go. My forecasts for the 12 signs. These are my forecasts for today, which is Tuesday, October the 17th, 2023. Aries. It's all feeling a bit difficult. I don't think it's personal, but it may feel that it's impossible to get anything done. Too much stuck emotions, people getting annoyed very quickly. And what you have to do is, if you're an Aries, is grit your teeth. And by late this evening in Europe, or this afternoon in the Americas, there'll be more movement and more optimism. And in Asia and Australasia, however, you need to hang on until tomorrow, because the moon is going to be in Scorpio throughout the day, so you're not going to benefit from the moon going into Sagittarius, which is of course a fire sign like Aries, and that would really help Aries. But now you're going to have to wait until tomorrow if you're in Asia and Australasia to get the blast of energy from moon in Sagittarius. Taurus. It's another day when outside forces get all the attention, and you may feel yourself to be sidelined. And certain people could cause chaos through their refusal to compromise or to see reason. For your part, you don't want to get involved, because if you do get involved, you may find that your natural stubbornness starts coming into play, with negative results all round. Gemini. For most of the day, it's probably best to fade into the background. There is nothing that you have to do, at least in a social sense, and if you stick to your plans, things should be fine. As the day progresses, things do start to improve, and by this evening you have the chance to interact meaningfully with certain individuals, but still, it's not a time for dramatic moves. Cancer. Everyone is trying their hardest to be friendly, or at least diplomatic, but it's hard work, and from your perspective, it may all seem rather fake. However, it is a good day to continue with the act. It might feel fake, as I've said, it might feel ridiculous, but it doesn't hurt, and it allows you to keep on good terms with everyone. At the end of the day, there's a long-standing obligation that does have to be resolved. Leo. The Sun continues moving towards the South Node, often known as the tail of the dragon. There continues to be the temptation to move in the wrong direction, and to make the wrong choices, and to choose the wrong friends. It's therefore important that you avoid making choices, especially if there is a subjective, emotional element. Virgo. A lot of people are thin-skinned. They're quick to take offence, and they take everything to heart. From a Virgo perspective, you have to tread carefully, and just because you know something doesn't mean that you should reveal it. And sometimes it's better to let people make mistakes than to get into a heated argument. Libra. Your first inclination is to keep everyone happy and to avoid doing anything to rock the boat. In the short term, this might be the right strategy, but there are things to be addressed, and if you allow them to fester, then there could be problems. It's better for something to be a bit late than to be very late. Scorpio. Something's bothering you. You know it's trivial, but you can't stop thinking about it. Or should I say, feeling about it. Perhaps you need to be distracted. You're putting too much energy into one or two things, and you're not allowing yourself to see the wider picture. Look to the left and the right, not just straight ahead. Sagittarius. If you're a typical Sagittarian, then you're open and above board, and you are what you are, meaning that if people don't like you, that's their problem, not yours. But today there is something that you need to keep back, which you might be tempted to reveal. Maybe it's an opinion or a sensitive detail. Capricorn, you have a clear vision about what you want, at least in the short term, and this vision is somewhat inflexible. In reality, you're not going to get everything you want, and some of your expectations need to be trimmed. As the day closes, many Capricorns will become more reflective. There are things to consider which reflect a changing world. Aquarius, it's not enough to have ambitions. You have to move beyond your various desires and ask yourself why you want what you want. On reflection, you realise that it's not about you, it's about the world around you and how everyone contributes to the creative process. It's for the greater good, or it's simply not worth bothering with. Pisces. Big ideas are all very well, but what do they mean? That is a question for Pisceans who are feeling idealistic but who also understand the importance of material values. You want to incorporate new ideas into your daily life and not just theorize about their spiritual value. Towards the end of the day, many Pisceans start considering their direction in life and what future steps are required. Okay, so I'm now going to move to the I Ching. And as always, I ask the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching this video? And then I threw 3 coins in the air 6 times, and I got a single hexagram. This hexagram did not move. It's also a hexagram, the same hexagram as I got yesterday. And this hexagram is opposition. It's not great. Opposition means that we are perhaps estranged from the rest of the world. That's certainly what in the translation of Greg Winkup suggested. I think he described this, the 38th hexagram, as about estrangement. We're not getting on with other people, and we're not really on their wavelength. Okay, that's a bit of a generalization, but there are certain people, important people, who we don't entirely see eye to eye with, and this is a bother, because we do need to get on with people. We almost feel a need to be taking orders from someone, be employed by someone, respecting someone. We actually want this. Whatever our position in life, we want someone to be someone we can look up to. But at the moment, that doesn't seem to be there. We do seem to be estranged. And if you are actually creating this estrangement yourself, let's say you've decided to fall out with someone, say someone's being obnoxious or they're telling you what to do and you don't like it and you want to say, I've had enough. Consider, is that really the right thing to do? Because you might just be moving from one authority figure to another authority figure. So if you find you don't get on with someone, particularly if it's a position of authority, perhaps at work, think carefully before getting too upset, because because if you do get upset, if you do decide you've had enough of someone, you're just going to find someone else who may be just as bad, even worse. So I just think it's just important to accept the situation. you can't we can't be friends with everyone today, and whenever there's a social contact, there's a difference of opinion, and that difference of opinion is going to be resolved. And the fact that this hexagram is locked, I think, is also significant, and it sort of gels with what's happening astrologically. Astrologically, the moon is in late Scorpio. Of course, it does depend to an extent where your location is, but the moon is in late Scorpio. It's made its last major aspect to a major planet, a traditional planet, so it's kind of going nowhere. And if you're in Europe, the moon doesn't move into Scorpio until the evening. It doesn't move out of Scorpio until the evening, and even then, it just moves straight to a square of Saturn. So that's what's going on astrologically, and so it's kind of not surprising that we've got this locked hexagram. It's said locked because it's not moving anywhere. There are no moving lines, so it's a rather stuck situation. We're just stuck here, and we can't really make headway. But it's important to be patient, because I do, this is a situation that will soon resolve itself. So, don't panic, don't get into an argument for the sake of it. Just get used to it, be stoical about it. Eventually, as I said, the situation will resolve itself. Okay, so what I want to do now is look at two charts related to the Polish election. I've certainly had one commenter that asked me to look at the Polish election, so that's what I'm doing. But I must apologise for my lack of knowledge. So the government is it's the sort of PIS. I think that's the kind of Law and Justice Party. I think it's fairly right wing. It has a reputation for being authoritarian, for being socially conservative. But it does have a socialistic streak. I think I believe it has, spent a lot of money on it. I think it has inducements for people to have children, for example, and to have large families. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's correct. I think I did actually see some kind of, I wouldn't say a rally, but some kind of grouping of this, when I was, 20 years ago when I was in Warsaw. I think I saw, I saw people from this party or this grouping. They were, giving out leaflets in the middle of Warsaw. People have had enough. Of course, liberals would be saying that, people want a closer relationship with Europe. People want the rule of law. People want to be more tolerant. But, probably people vote mainly for economic reasons, don't they? I don't know. So if the Law and Justice Party really are done for in this election, then, whoever takes over has got to be able to deliver economically very quickly. So let's start off by looking at the horoscope of Jarosław Kaczyński, who I think is the Deputy Prime Minister. He was born June 18th, 1949. He had a twin who was killed on April the 10th, 2010, in a plane crash. The plane was going to Russia to commemorate the Katyn massacre, when loads of Polish officers were murdered by the Soviets, and the plane crashed, which obviously a lot of suspicions were raised about why it crashed and what the air traffic controllers was doing and so forth. But look at his third house. Now, in astrology, the third house represents one's siblings. So he's got the sun on his third house cusp. This is the Placidus third house cusp. He's got Sun on his third house cusp, and he's got Uranus pretty close to his third house cusp. His third house cusp is at 2824 Gemini. Uranus is at 0 Cancer, and there's a Sun-Uranus conjunction on his third house cusp, and that's that to my mind is pretty good symbolism for death of one's brother in an accident. I think that fits pretty well. Saturn at the time of the crash. Let me just check that. I think. Sorry, I did check it before, but I just want to be sure I've got this right. So that crash was April the 10th, 2010. So Saturn was around 29 Virgo at the time of that crash. So Saturn was sort of square the Sun, and it was almost square the Sun-Uranus midpoint. So Saturn was activating the Sun-Uranus midpoint 13 years ago when his brother was killed. Now, as far as the personality of Jarosław Kaczyński, he's got a lot of stuff in Gemini. Gemini recently does have an association with populist politicians. Politicians like Boris Johnson. I would have said Boris Johnson was pretty populist, trying to appeal to the people above Parliament and government and so forth. I'm not making any positive or negative point about Boris Johnson. There seems to be a link there with populism and Gemini. Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, is a Gemini. Of course, as I said, Boris Johnson, just to show you Boris Johnson's chart, if you look at Boris Johnson's chart, Boris Johnson was born on June the 19th, 1968. So, okay, different years, but in terms of the birthday, Boris Johnson's birthday is just a day later. Donald Trump, a Gemini. So that's that kind of fits. I mean, I suppose if you're a populist and you're a Gemini, you can say things because you're a Gemini. If you're a Gemini, you can say it. And other signs find it difficult to just say it. They just get embarrassed or they don't want to cause offense. But Geminis just say it. And it's just, Geminis kind of take the view that it's just words. And, they can say the words and then you can see what happens. So I think I think that would very much fit. Now, where would you see a traditionalist? Someone who is, his government, it's very Catholic. He said it's opposed to abortion, traditional Polish values, whatever they are. Where would you see that? Well, I suppose you could say it's Cancer. I mean, Cancer is a traditional sign. Taurus would be quite a traditional sign. I suppose you can say, well, he's got Venus in Cancer on the IC. I've got Venus in Cancer on the IC. Am I a traditionalist? I don't know. but that Venus is square Neptune. So if it's square Neptune, Neptune is about the fantasy, is about a fantasy of tradition. Very often people who are traditionalists do have some. They have a fantasy about what the world used to be like, and maybe that's his Venus square Venus square Venus square Neptune. As far as what's going on in his life at the moment, now he has had Saturn stationed at around 3 or 4 some months ago, at around 4 or 5 Pisces. So he's recently had Saturn square his Mars. So he would have had Saturn in Pisces square his Mars. Saturn's now going retrograde, and Saturn is moving towards the opposition of his Saturn. He's got Saturn opposition Saturn. Very exactly, Saturn actually goes direct, stationary direct on November the 4th. So in just a few weeks, Saturn will go direct there. So he's going into this election with Saturn opposition his own Saturn. This can be a difficult time. It's like a sort of life crisis. We all have to experience Saturn square Saturn, Saturn opposition Saturn, and so forth. So how old is he? He is 70. He's 76, so all of us around 76 will have Saturn opposition Saturn. But he's going into an election with Saturn opposition Saturn. So it's a particularly difficult time. I mean, I'm not sure, I don't think that he is standing for, he's trying to be, it's not as if he's trying to be Prime Minister or anything. He's a Deputy Prime Minister. I think it's more about his party and his belief system and so forth. But it is a difficult time. Now, what is kind of interesting about his Saturn at 113 Virgo is it is conjunct Ukraine's when Ukraine got its independence. It was on August the 24th, 1991. Ukraine had its sun at 056 Virgo. So Kaczynski's Saturn is opposition, is absolutely conjunct Uranus's, conjunct Ukraine's sun. That's kind of quite interesting because we've been looking at Poland and how it's been evolving during the war of Ukraine. It was certainly originally seen as a strong ally of Ukraine, the strongest ally of Ukraine, and a lot of arms and support was funneled through Poland. But the government seems to have soured about what's going on about the Ukrainian government. There have been concerns about grain deals, and Poland seems to be, at least the Polish government seems to be getting a bit sick of Ukraine, and I think that may be reflected in Kaczynski's Saturn on Ukraine's sun. In the end, it looked as if they were perhaps going to fall out. I mean, I don't know the details. But if there's a new government, for example, if Donald Tusk was Prime Minister with a civic platform, reading what people say, they're going to be much more sympathetic to Ukraine. They're going to be more willing to be supportive. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out, but if you look at Donald Tusk's chart, he has got his. Here's Donald Tusk's chart. Remember, Ukraine he was born on April 22nd, 1957. Now, we don't know for sure what time when he was. We don't know for sure what time he was born. At least according to a Rodding rating, it's given a C rating, so it's kind of a bit unreliable. But the Polish Astrology Association states that it is 1201 is his time of birth. So let's just work with this time of birth. See how it works. So if you remember that Ukraine's sun is at 0 degrees Virgo, then you can see that Tusk's Sun-Venus conjunction at the beginning of Taurus is trine Ukraine's sun. So that might indicate that certainly might indicate a more sympathetic relationship between Poland and Ukraine if Tusk were to become prime minister. And of course, Tusk he's a kind of a representative of Europe. He is completely tied into the European project. So that's the kind of person that Poland is potentially bringing in as its new prime minister. But we don't know yet, and I haven't made any attempt to forecast what's going to happen in these elections. But his chart, assuming particularly if we take his chart as timed, if he really was born at 12:01 a.m., he has what astrologers call a grand cross. So you can see the grand cross. There is his moon at 0 Aquarius, opposition Uranus at 2 or 3 Leo, which is square Neptune, which is at 1 Scorpio, which is opposition the Sun-Venus conjunction in Taurus. And it's all in fixed signs. With all those fixed signs, this is someone who has a very rigid view of the world. He has a clear belief about the way things should be. Poland as part of Europe, a fully functioning European member of the European Union that doesn't cause trouble, that is no longer one of the awkward squad. Although it's kind of a bit weird, isn't it, that Poland has struggled so much for its independence. I guess over the last century, it's struggled to be free of Russia. In the early 20s, I think it defeated Russia in a war with Russia. Then the fight after the Second World War to find freedom from the Soviet yoke, and of course forever. And there was a time when it was under Nazi rule. So it's really been a big struggle for independence for a long, long time. And yet Poland just wants to become another part of the European Union, and that seems a bit strange to me. But this chart. So let's say he does if he were to become prime minister, what is the problem? What's the first problem? What is the problem? The problem would be Pluto, because Pluto is now going direct, and you see he's got his moon. He's got his moon at 134 Aquarius. So Pluto is going to it's going to make a conjunction to his moon, and it's going to make an opposition to his Uranus, and it's going to be square his sun. So Pluto completely hits this grand cross. So if you take the view that Pluto is an important planet, that Pluto transits really matter, then if he does become prime minister again, it's going to be really tough. And I think that, again, it's quite important that if he really was born at 1 minute past 12, That moon is keyed in to the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Remember, there was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction on at the end of December 2020 in the first degree of Aquarius. So that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in 2020 was conjunct his moon, and opposition, by definition, opposition his Uranus, and square his Sun-Venus conjunction, and square his Neptune. And so Pluto is when it goes into Aquarius very soon, in a few months' time, it will conjunct with that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and then his moon is going to feel the full force of it. So I wonder what kind of crises that's going to mean for him if he were to be Poland's next prime minister. My thinking would be that, with the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the end of 2020, I mean, when I wrote about that conjunction before the Ukraine war, I saw that conjunction as being about the ascendancy of Russia, and it may be that his big challenge as prime minister will be dealing with the collapse of Ukraine. I think that because I believe that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is not forecasting a Russian defeat. I think that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is about 20 Russian years, the ascendancy of Russia. And so maybe that's something he is going to have to deal with. And certainly that's one aspect of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. But, that assumes that he is going to be Poland's next prime minister. Also, in his chart, he has got, there's his Sun-Venus conjunction, but it's opposition Neptune, and that Neptune is conjunct the midheaven. Yes, he is very clear in his belief about what Europe can do, but Neptune opposition Sun-Venus suggests that, to an extent, it's a fantasy. It's deluding him. I think there is something delusional there. I know he has this image. I said I don't know much about him, but I sort of remember when Britain was having its Brexit negotiations, Donald Tusk was, trying to assert himself and trying to assert Europe, and he seemed to be sort of, Mr. Sensible. But in spite of that image of being sort of grown up and sensible, and, as European politicians and bureaucrats, they try to give that impression that they're sensible and, they're the ones that know what's going on. Actually, there is something, I think, quite deluded there with Neptune as being part of that Grand Cross, and I suppose it may be that as the European dream starts to fade, I think it's already fading, but I think over the next few years, when Pluto rolls into Aquarius, and we see the problems. I think we're going. That's where the fantasies start to fade. It becomes clear that he was deluding himself, but he's with that sun, with all those planets in fixed signs. He really does dig his heels in. And so that might be what his premiership would be like. But I must emphasize, I don't know anything about Polish politics. I just wanted to look at two people's charts. You may know more about it than me. Nonetheless, I hope you found that useful. And for myself, I'll do some more studying on Poland. But anyway, I will talk to you again tomorrow.